Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Smart Manufacturing Week organized by Lux Innovation. Today's webinar is about smart value and supply chain. My name is Caroline Muller, and I am manager of the Materials and Manufacturing Cluster at Lux Innovation. And I will have the pleasure to moderate this webinar with my colleague Anja Höttger, project manager at Lux Innovation. Hello, Anja.
Hello. Nice to talk to you.
Today, we will hear 4 smart Luxembourgish companies, and they will share with us their technologies and experience in the field of value and supply chain. The first speaker will be Mr. Piero Cavigliasso from the company Voilà Closures Group. Good morning, Piero.
Good morning, everybody.
And then we will listen to Mr. Mario Trainen from company B Medical Systems. Good morning, Mario.
Good morning, everybody.
And for the third presentation, there will be 2 speakers. Mr. Franz Yvelin from Valera Aero. Good morning.
Hello.
Together with Mr. Stefano from Champ.
Good morning.
Hello, you will have the possibility to ask questions online to all the speakers, and we will spend 15 minutes at the end of the 3 presentations for a Q&A session. So please do not hesitate to ask questions to our speakers. As you have seen, we're using a very polyvalent digital platform with many functionalities. Anja will now present you this tool briefly. Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline, and welcome, everybody. So, as you said, before starting with the presentation, I will share with you a few guidelines on how to use the features of the digital platform we are using today. If you look at the right side of your screen, you will find 3 little icons that you can click. The bottom one will give you a list of the people that are attending the webinar. Just above that, there's a section for polls. If you click on it, you will see that there's already 1 poll. It's an example poll. The question is, what was the first thing you thought about when you woke up this morning? And you have 4 options. So you can use this question to familiarize yourself with the tool. We will add additional questions later during the webinar, and we would be very happy to get your feedback. Finally, there's a section for question on top, and this one is very important. We will have a common Q&A session after the presentation. So not after each presentation, but all speakers will answer the questions together. So it is important to post your questions as they come up. You can also upvote the ones that you find interesting from other people, and this will allow us to choose the most relevant questions to the speakers during the Q&A. After the webinar, please make sure that you also check out the lobby. And the lobby you can reach by clicking the arrow on top left of your browser. Here you can find virtual booths from various service providers that you can visit, and you can learn about them and talk to them. And finally, on the right bottom corner in the lobby, this is for networking. So you can join group discussions about the topics we talked today, but you can also contact specific people for private networking. Okay, and now let's move to the first speaker. We start with Mr. Piero Cavigliasso from Voilà Closures. He's the Group Technology Innovation Director. And he will talk to us about the role of smart packaging and IoT in the wine and spirits value chains. Please, Piero, go ahead.
So good morning, everybody, again. I don't see the first slide. Is it my problem or?
It should come up.
Okay.
Quickly. Yeah.
All right. So the title is, as you see, about smart packaging, which is what we have been done in the recent years. Maybe you can go to the first slide so that I show what Voilà Closure normally does. We don't produce spirits and wine, but we produce closures for bottles of spirit and wine. So all these brands that you see in this slide, they use our caps or closures. We produce 15 billion of caps every year in 30 plants around the world, in all the continents, and we are about 4,500 people. So this was just to give an idea of what we normally do. Now I will focus the presentation on connected packaging, which is an important trend of the recent years. There are forecasts that say that there will be 7 billion of connected packages in the next future. Packaging is becoming, as you see, an important touch point for consumers to get connected with brands and vice versa. Next. Yeah, so as you see, it is becoming more and more common that consumers are getting connected to a brand thanks to a connected packaging. Next. So there are new frontiers in that sense, and I'm going to show them. In this case, in this slide, we see what we have done in order to make our closure connected. It is evident in this slide the fact that we have been inserting in our caps different kind of technologies. The main is NFC technology, so NFC chips which are readable by any mobile phone. Additional technologies are based on QR codes and other types of digital codes. Next. In the last 2 years, we've been implementing many of our closures with these digital technologies, and we are now ready to sell them more or less to all our clients using different types of caps. Next. So what are the applications? We can see in the next slide what are the 3 main fields of application of these digital technologies in digital packaging. The first is consumer engagement, so new way to engage consumers directly. The second is track and trace, so new possibilities to monitor your bottles from production to the supply up to the end to the consumption with a single product view, and this can be very effective also to manage fight to gray markets and similar problems. The third, but not less important, is anti-counterfeit. So these digital technologies can be a very effective and very modern way to fight black markets, so counterfeited bottles of spirits, wine, etc. Next. So if we focus on the consumer engagement, I will have now a short series of slides which I'm going to browse very quickly. What you can do is to engage a dialogue with the consumer by telling the story of your wine or the story of your spirit. Next. You can share experiences, so create a sort of community between the brand and the consumers among themselves. Next. You can promote special context, and you can capture data from your consumers. You know, data capturing for consumers is a very important trend in order to be able to do one-to-one marketing activities. Next. So e-commerce management and customer acquisition data again. Next. You can run a very effective and very interesting loyalty programs and promote a repurchase of your goods. Next. You can interact with the consumer by promoting recipes, cocktail recipes, or food pairings, etc. Next. And we have some interesting new technologies that are also enabling the consumer and the brand to talk to each other. In this case, now if you stay in the previous, in this case we have what we call a talking cap, which means that you have a sort of virtual sommelier telling you information about the wine, and the consumer can actually ask, like with artificial intelligence application, can actually ask questions to the bottle. Next. So track and trace, as I said, is the second important application of this technology. If you go to the next slide, we can see what are in fact the possibilities. So we are placing a chip on a bottle, and then we can read this chip in several different situations along the value chain, the logistic value chain. So the bottle can be related to a box can be related to a pallet. The pallet can be followed with additional technologies through the travel to the warehouses and to the shops. In the shops, the consumer can read the caps, and also when the consumer is at home can read again the cap, and all this information is uploaded to a platform, an IoT platform, which allows, as you can imagine, not only track and tracing, but also collection of very interesting information from the consumers. Next. So the benefits, as I said before, gray market detection, so distribution, illegal or semi-illegal distribution in geographical areas which are different from the forecasted ones, real-time inventory of the goods around in the world in the various warehouses, effective stock management, claim management, quality monitoring. These are some of the benefits that the brand can have with these systems. Next. Also, the benefit can be in the area of product certification. You know that wine and spirits, they are subjected to laws related to the production and distribution, and this system can be very effective in order to manage in a modern way the product certification, the certification of the origin, etc. Next. Even digital tax stamps, I think you are familiar with the paper labels that sometimes are applied to closures. Even those tax stamps can be substituted by more modern technologies like RFID, NFC technologies, with all the advantages of digital compared to analogic. Next. So anti-counterfeit, last but not least, we believe that NFC technology applied together with IoT, so Internet of Things, and blockchain technologies, they can be probably the best way to fight counterfeit of spirits and wine. There are big numbers. Wine and spirits are one of the most counterfeited sector, together with the pharmaceutical and fashion. And therefore, the economical damage that brands have is huge. As you see here, we have a couple of numbers that are telling a lot. 12% of spirits are counterfeited around the world. Next. So what we do, we combine a mix of physical and electronic or digital method to protect a bottle from counterfeiting. First of all, we produce closures that are very difficult to replicate by Chinese suppliers, which are the ones that are more active in that area. We include tamper-evident features, so when you open the bottle, it's nearly impossible to reclose it in a way that is not evident. And of course, we add NFC technology with highly sophisticated chips that are impossible to clone. And of course, also blockchain and IoT technology is extremely important to guarantee the unicity of the bottle and the registration of a bottle. Next. So some case studies. I'm going very quickly on some of the cases that we've been promoting. You see here quite famous brands like Malibu, Ballantine, and Jameson. They all belong to Pernod Ricard Group, which is the one that is pushing more on these connected packaging technologies. But there are some famous winemakers in the US and some winemakers in Greece and Italy, which have been already adopting these technologies for many different reasons. The most common is consumer engagement, so to manage loyalty programs, etc. But also brand protection is an upcoming need that is satisfied by these technologies. Next. So I think I was even quicker because I've been using 12 minutes only. What I would like to add, because I have a couple of minutes left, is that we are happy to present these technologies because they can be applied to caps, but they can also be applied to different sectors. The main, which comes to my mind, is the pharmaceutical sector, where some of the common problems are similar. So product certification, product verification and authentication, logistic track and tracing in order to be sure that the product is transported in the right conditions, which could be temperature, etc. And also, you can do with this kind of connected packaging, you can engage with the client of a pharmaceutical product. You can engage a dialogue that goes from the instructions to be given to the user, to the protection, to the authentication of the product, etc. All in a modern way. Another interesting parallel application that I found with some of the other speakers is that to control the condition of transport of the good is becoming a very, very important issue. In the case of wine, we have to monitor temperature, but this is also common to other fields. Again, pharmaceutical, it can be a field in which these temperature control technologies can be used in a very effective way. I would stop here, and of course I'm open to receive any possible question.
Thank you very much, Piero. As I said earlier, we will have the Q&A at the end. So to the audience, don't forget to post your questions in the questions section so we can collect them all and ask later. We will now move to the second presentation, which is proposed to you by Mr. Mario Treinen. He's a Chief Operations Officer at B Medical Systems, and he will explain to us how his company used COVID as an opportunity to improve supply chain efficiency. Over to you, Mr. Treinen.
Hi, everybody. Thanks a lot. Maybe first, before I can start, and before I explain what B Medical does, could I maybe ask you to go into the poll tab, which is at the right of your screen, and maybe answer that small question that if you knew B Medical before this presentation or no. This would actually help us to understand how much visibility we get even in Luxembourg, which we were noticing at the latest weeks and months that a lot of people didn't even know we were doing these kind of operations here in Hosingen in the north of Luxembourg. So I will activate the poll. You already put it in, so thanks for polling on that opportunity. So as a title, I mean, using COVID as an opportunity is probably a little bit provocative, but I'm going to cover briefly who B Medical is, who we are, and from which sector we are coming. Secondly, I will then go and review a little bit what opportunities we could provide in the sanitary fight against the COVID. And then third, what is also important as a PME or growing company, we also have a lot of internal challenges from a supply chain perspective. So this is where you can either say or see this as a big issue, or you can also see this as an opportunity. And that's why also this title is coming from. Just over B Medical. So we used to be part of the Electrolux group, always been either located in Vianden and then later on moved to Hosingen. And then we were part of the Dometic group and got the B Medical name in 2015. So you see that we have a lot of customers and we are dealing with a lot of national and global organizations like UNICEF, Red Cross, Médecins Sans Frontières, or Gavi. And if you go to the next slide, you will see that typically we have been active in 3 different segments, which were pretty distinct. So one is really the vaccine cold chain, typically more the traditional vaccination campaigns organized very often by Gavi or UNICEF. We also had been an active medical refrigeration segment, and the third segment was blood management solutions. So always a medical refrigeration aspect, and we have been trying in the past to keep our machines and units connected by a remote monitoring solution. So a little similar and probably a little less sophisticated than what we have seen before, but we are trying to get the permanent temperature control of all the units in the world, and also getting as much feedback and try to get the best service to our customers by knowing exactly what is going on in our machines. On the world reach, so we have roughly 350 million people which were vaccinated with a B medical device, or thanks to B medical device. Just the next slide, also a few numbers, and you probably got the message that we are trying to get a global reach, and especially on the vaccination piece. So again, about 130 countries we have been equipping at this stage with 400,000 units, roughly all over the world, over our operations year over year. Now is actually coming the big question. All those customers you are seeing on the next slide, how are they going to be addressing the COVID situation? And that's actually the content of the next slides, knowing that we are a specialist in the medical refrigeration, and that we are also one of the first companies being a medical device certified company in the medical refrigeration market. We know that we could be a potential player in that cold chain or COVID cold chain, and I will explain in the next slides how we are addressing this. So we have, and that's an important point, so we have different power sources we can use. So we have solar powered units. We also have power units which could either work on a AC powered grid, DC powered units which are battery units, or also kerosene and gas. We are able to produce units which are functioning at different storage temperatures. So as well, the typical vaccine storage, which is between 2 and 6, but we also have units at -20 and -80. And I will come later on a little bit about the complexity about all these temperatures. And you probably have been following this in the media recently with the Pfizer announcement around -80. So that's something which is certainly adding some complexity to our supply chain. And very important also is that our units are able to be functional at 10 degrees as well as 43 degrees in very tropical environments, which is, if you're talking about or thinking about a unit which has a -80 interior, is a delta of more than 100 degrees between the outside and the inside. So the COVID vaccine has been a very big challenge, and I think everybody is hearing on an hourly basis information on this. And there has been recently, in the next slide, you will see some announcement about potential vaccines. This is just a summary, and just bear with me. I'm not a vaccine production specialist. I just wanted to get some of the key vaccines which are at this stage on the run to be developed. And from our perspective, the third column, which is the storage temperature, is actually the key point. So we have different vaccines in the run which have a 2 to 8 vaccine storage temperature, a few other vaccines, and certainly the Moderna vaccine, which has now recently got some announcements on efficiency, has a -20 storage capacity or storage temperature, and the Pfizer candidate, where we got some information a few weeks ago or last week, has a -80 degree or -70 degree temperature of storage. So this, of course, leaves us with a pretty big pretty complex situation, where we, in the next slide, you can see, have been challenging our products and make sure that we address the different products to have some flexibility for our customers. So our range is covering ultra-low freezers, which can have a set point for -86. Typically, ultra-low freezers are functioning at around -80 or 86. What we have now been doing is we have been adjusting and qualifying and validating our ultra-low freezers to a temperature of -20. This is brand new and also pretty new for the supply chain, since we are one of the only suppliers of ultra-low refrigeration, which can work as well at -20 and -80 degrees. So this leaves a lot of flexibility for the people. So if now a government would want to buy a freezer for the Pfizer vaccine and then afterwards would get the Moderna vaccine, it's certainly possible. On the other side of the temperature range, we also have been trying to vary and broaden up the spectrum of our refrigerators. So we have in the middle some ice-lined refrigeration and freezers where we could go from 8 degrees temperature for vaccine storage to a -20. So this could be a perfectly valid options for the last mile delivery, and that's something we are now trying to work with the different sanitary institutions, also with the ministry, to make sure that we develop together what could be the optimized supply chain for each country, for each region, for each Bundesland in Germany, for example. So that's something we are now at this stage working out. And thanks to opening up the range of our temperature ranges of our products, we are able to deliver a much more flexible solution to our customers. Also, the transport boxes, which cover a range of 6 degrees or 8 degrees till -80 degrees. Of course, since these are passive solutions, you need to find the right way to keep that temperature inside. So there are also a lot of studies going on, active studies with different companies to make sure that we position and we have or provide the transport boxes in the right way to have a end-to-end cold chain solution for our suppliers. And probably in the whole market of medical refrigeration, we seem to be one of the only companies who are able to deliver as well a passive solution, a -80 solution, and every temperature in between. So this is about the challenge from our customer side. So now the challenge from a production side is a little different. So we are dealing on high delivery timelines. So what the customers now want, they want now hundreds of -U degrees per units yesterday, where we were not equipped at this stage to produce all these units. We also don't exactly know what temperature profile we are going to deal with. And secondly, we also don't know exactly what demand, which country, which electrical grid, and there are a lot of uncertainties related to the demand. So that leaves me in my role as Chief Operations Officer also with a very big challenge about how are we going to address these in a smart way. And there are certainly two components which are very important. One is digitalization. I mean, getting smarter in our manufacturing process, but also getting local. So those are two components you will see later on. I will cover a little bit more. So what we have been doing, we have been working, of course, in the infrastructure. So we are in the phase of expanding our company. So we are, and luckily we have a lot of good and very motivated local partners, which helping us to make this expansion project happening in record time. So this is something we are working on. We are also looking at the raw material and parts, and also at the human resources side. On the next slide, there are a little bit more details. So I already discussed briefly about the production expansion. I'm not going to cover this in detail, but we also had, besides that, a program which I will go a little bit more in detail is the Fit for Resilience side. On the raw material parts, we are looking at multiple and local sourcing opportunities. So we historically had some parts coming from everywhere in the world with a global supply chain. With the COVID situation, we have been facing some lockdowns, some border closures. And to be fully honest, there's no point in expanding a production plant if you don't get the parts. So that's why we have been, and I think this should be a general turn in the economy. We are thinking about how can we get a little bit more local. This involves some electrical parts, voltage stabilizers, E&I components. So this is really something where we have been in the past, as most of our competitors and most people here, or most manufacturers of similar equipment, very much sourcing out of Asia. Of course, this is something which we are in the way of rethinking and looking for local partners. Also, everything related to metal parts and the also pre-assembly. So if anybody in the call here thinks that we could be a potential partner for me, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. So we are really looking at getting this local supply chain increased, just to make sure we are getting much less vulnerable for all the impact of the COVID. And I mean, it's maybe not a digital way, but it's certainly a smart way to look at a global supply chain. On the last point, on the human resources, maybe also there, we have already been hiring 51 people over the last 3 months. We expect to hire about 120 more. We went to multiple shifts to avoid the impact of COVID. And we are still looking at some regional partnerships with some local companies. And also there, if somebody in the call is I mean, maybe struggling a little bit and wants to have a kind of win-win situation set up, we could also have a kind of circular economy point on that specific topic of human resources. So that's certainly something where we are working together with the Ministry of Economy and the Ministry of Work to make sure that we could maybe have a win-win situation for some companies which might be temporarily struggling, whereas we have a temporary increase of workforce demand, where we could have a kind of win-win situation. So this is really an open appeal to reach out to me if you think on either raw material supply or human resources matter. We could set up any win-win situation. Please reach out to me. On the last point, which is more about smart or digital supply chain, we have been, and thanks to the program Fit for Resilience, also organized by Lux Innovation, we have been able to do a detailed gap analysis. And as many of the small companies, we have been facing the situation that we weren't prepared at all for the massive wave of home office. We have a pretty paper-based approach on everything related to documentation. And also a lot of the systems were very complicated and not interacting. So our whole functioning and organization of the company was basically based on having the people locally available, which isn't as such an issue, and probably a lot of companies in Luxembourg have been in the same situation. But of course, suddenly in April, May, we were noticing that a lot or several of our quality systems started to get a little stuck because of unavailability of digital solutions. And that's why we took the opportunity over the last 3 months to have this fit resilience assessment and really try to design systems for efficient execution of our business. And so I can only encourage or tell most of the people, please, I think there's still time to do that assessment. It was helpful for us to understand what is going on. And in the next slide, which is going to be my last slide, I wanted to just share one opportunity which I personally didn't have in the scope at all before we started the journey, because if you look at a structure we have, so we have a 4-shift ERP system which has all the information in, which as such isn't an issue, but there is some interconnectivity issues with some other systems, and all the individual legacy systems in our supply chain are as such good systems, but the lack of interconnectivity poses an issue. Also, a lot of these processes were paper-based. So what we did and what we are looking at is, and that's thanks to some of the suppliers in that specific market, we have been looking at the low-code approach. So instead of having a huge development and going for a complete new installation of an ERP system, we have been choosing the option to keep our legacy systems and actually tie in the different dots or tie the different dots together by programming tools and applications in between those different interfaces. And that's something which we have been running a few pilots, which have been showing good result, and we are probably and we are going to go and roll out over the next 2 years a full program to digitalize most and all of our processes thanks to the low-code approach. So that's basically the overview of our supply chain challenges. So you basically notice that we have as well an opportunity in the market to help the sanitary situation all over by providing smart solutions. We also have our own challenges, as a lot of other companies have, where we try to find our own smart solutions and where we might need help of the local community for either supply of materials, manpower, or also help us during that digitalization trajectory. We are honestly still at the beginning, and we will have to cover over the next 2 years. Okay, that's basically all, Caroline, from my side.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trinan. It's good to hear that you're working on solutions to efficiently and safely transport the vaccines when it will be available finally, hopefully. And we count on you. Again, I would like to remind you.
Thank you for the pressure. I feel the stones every morning when I wake up, so that's good.
Somebody has to do it. Again, I remind the audience to put the questions you might have in the question section so we can answer them at the end of the session. Okay, and the third and last item today is a joint talk from 2 industry partners that were actually introduced to each other by Lux Innovation, so we're very happy. The presentation will be given by Mr. Stefan Noll, who is the head of digital engagement and transformation at Jump Cargo Systems, and by Mr. Franz Yvelin, senior advisor to the CEO at Valère Aero. And they will talk about what happens when 2 Luxembourgish air cargo supply chain players are streaming for an operational excellence. Please, gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Bonjour, hello.
Bonjour,
Stéphane.
France. Hello, everybody. Maybe we want to start with the slides deck.
With the first one, maybe.
Nathalie?
It's coming up. All right. So, bonjour Stéphane, bonjour to all. We are very happy to be there. Clearly, as Anya has indicated, our purpose is really to show up when 2 Luxembourgish air cargo supply chain experts are meeting and then streaming for operational excellence. So we're just going to introduce ourselves very quickly, then we'll talk about Valère and Champ and the e-freight vision we have towards automation and the local value chain.
And we will finish with the key takeaway.
So who is who? I'm Franz Yvelin. I'm the senior advisor to the CEO here at Valère. I'm also a terrible pilot. I have 25 years of aviation experience. And as a pilot, I'm type rated on the Airbus 320, Boeing 737, 757, 767, among others.
Stefan Noll, I'm in charge of the digitization in Champ. I'm coming 30 years of air cargo experience, mainly with freight forwarder, airlines, postal operators, and also with IATA for 11 years, and now with Champ for the IT side of the industry.
So let's introduce our companies. We'll start with Valère. So Valère has 6 different activities, and we're going to focus on one today, which is the cargo conversion. But on top of the cargo conversion, we are, of course, leasing and trading airplanes. We are recycling airplanes. So thanks to the previous presentation, I know who I can say my aluminium to. And we have engine trading, leasing, and repair. And we also have 2 maintenance, repair, and overhaul sites in France, based in Montpellier and in Châteauroux. We're going to focus today on the first one, which is the cargo conversion, because previously at Valère, we were converting Boeing, and now we are mainly focusing on Airbus airplane, but I'm going to get back to that in a few minutes. About Valère, next slide, please. About Valère, first of all, and I think that's very important for you all to quote, it's a true entrepreneurial success story. So Valère has been founded by my longtime friend and partner Grégoire Le Bigot, who built it up from scratch since 2003. And it now has 3 sites, 2 in France, 1 in Luxembourg. And clearly it's a profitable business. It has foreseen a 400% growth from 2012 to 2019. It's assembling a team of multicultural experts. We have about 150 team members as of today. And clearly, in a matter of just a few years, we have become a recognized player in aviation. Next. As said before, I'm going to focus today on the cargo conversion activity of Valère, who is once again the mature airplane or the mature aircraft specialist. The key core activity of Valère is to convert airplanes, typically 15 to 20 years old, and to convert them into cargo. Some of you may not know, but more than half of the cargo air freight is actually being flown usually by passenger airplanes. And as of today, because of COVID, today and since a few months, and again, most probably and sadly for a few months, these cargo capacities are very much diminished because of the lack of passenger airplanes being flying. So that has created an even stronger demand for true cargo airplanes. When I say true cargo airplanes, I'm not talking of the airplanes we are just taking some seats off to put some cartons on board, which was like an emergency situation, mainly to fly masks to and from China. But talking about true cargo capacities with doors and containers and a more traditional supply chain solution that you are all familiar with. A special focus today will be on the Airbus 321 cargo, or 321F for freighter. This is the most advanced and the most recent cargo airplanes in the world. We at Valère have been a pioneer with this airplane because we have converted, tested, certified, sold, and just delivered in the middle of the COVID crisis, the first Airbus 321 freighter to Qantas. Qantas is, as most of you should know, the largest air carrier in Australia, the national carrier of Australia. For information, this is the only plane Qantas has been receiving and accepting this year in 2020, since all of the orders and deliveries which were planned have been postponed to the next year. So we are very proud of that. We are actually even more proud at Valère to have been able to deliver it under such challenging and adverse conditions. And of course, this is not something that just happened like that, if I may. It has happened because the airplane has true capabilities which are totally unmatched as of today in the market. Mainly before, most of the cargo airplanes were Boeing airplanes. Like we have a very good example here in Luxembourg with Cargolux, who is using Boeing 747. That's for very long range and for very high tonnage cargo. We also have a little bit smaller airplanes, which are the 777, which is typically a module of being able to carry 100 tons of freight. Then below that, you have the Boeing 767 freighter, which is usually flying in the 60 tons vicinity of freight on long range destinations as well. And below that, before, you used to have the choice between, again, Boeing and Boeing, because it was 737-800, 737 Classic, or Boeing 757, which is in the vicinity of 25 to 30 tons capability. The good news is that the Airbus 321 freighter can carry about 220 cubic meter, and up to 27 tons of freight over a 2,000 nautical mile range. It is the most efficient cargo airplane in its class. It has a fly-by-wire technology, and that's the first one as a narrow-body cargo airplane to be able to provide that. It is, and I think that's very important because we are talking about smart value in the supply chain today. I think being sustainable is something which has become really a strong requirement for our industry. We are being looked at, and we have to be efficient. That's true, of course, for Amazon, and you are all hearing the criticism here and there against Amazon, for example, in France, and I can speak freely about it because I'm French, but what we can see here and there is clearly that we have to become more and more sustainable for our planet, of course, but also for the general public. Clearly, the Airbus 321 freighter has been developed in that sense with a CO2 emission and a cargo and a fuel burn, which is like about 20% lower than its direct competitor, which was the Boeing 757, for a similar tonnage to be able to be flown. Clearly, the 757 could flow 25 to 28 tons. That's exactly the same on the Airbus 321. So it can fly the same volume, it can fly the same tonnage, but it burns 20% less fuel. We have today at Valère, and again, very proud of that as well, being able to sign an LOI for 10 Airbus 321 freighter with GlobalX, which is a startup in the US. And we have signed a firm lease agreement with SmartLinks in Malta, who will operate 2 Airbus 321 freighter. And of course, as I said, the first one, which was the very first prototype in the world, has been delivered in October to Qantas. Now, this plane is a very good plane, but we have decided to go a bit further. And for now, I leave the stand to Stéphane.
Thank you very much, Franz. And about CHAMP, so we are supporting the largest air cargo community at CHAMP Cargo Systems. We support this community through 3 main streams. One is enterprise system solutions, which is in use in about 300 airports around the globe. We supply also the connectivity platform between the airlines and the freight forwarders, and also the regulators, because nowadays more and more regulators would like to know what's coming in advance. So we provide this service. And the last but not the least, the air cargo applications, which we are developing around our solutions. Next slide, please. Thank you. But also at CHAMPS, we have several exploration. If you keep clicking, please. Thank you. We have several exploration where we are looking at robot processing applications. We are looking also at IoT. We strongly believe that IoT will be the technology that will push our industry and increase visibility. We are looking also at blockchain applications. We currently have some pilots between Singapore and CDG with Singapore Airlines and Bolloré. And we have also now looking at trade applications also for the industry. And all these technologies are supported the digitalization into the air cargo ecosystems. Next slide, please. Now, what is the e-freight vision about? Franz has presented to you how beautiful this Airbus 320 aircraft is, and what we decided to do with our team of experienced loadmaster and applied mathematicians, we have digitized the loading process of this aircraft by having data interactions with the cargo which is built in the warehouse and the aircraft loading. Franz, maybe you want to tell us about this.
Yes. So as you can see on your screen, you have the Airbus 321 freighter under the colors of Valère, which are, of course, the best ones. But we accept different liveries on request. That being said, that airplane is very efficient. It burns 20% less fuel than its competitor. It's more and more sustainable. And again, I think that's a key item. It is also much more economical. For example, and for the specialists who may be listening, the flight hour per flight cycle ratio on a typical narrow body airplane for cargo, it's about 1 hour plus. In Europe, it's a little bit less than 2 hours in the US, just to give example. So those airplanes are going to make several cycles for limited flight hours in the end. And that's true. Either it's coming from Leipzig for DHL, for Paris CDG for FedEx, or in other cities for UPS, for example. So clearly, this is something which has a cost advantage in the end. And on top of that, it's good for the planet. So as we said, it's a very good airplane. and it is designed to act as a very perfect complement to actor or players using big airplanes on long distance, like Cargolux, for example. And this airplane is good. Well, thanks to Lux Innovation, we have been able to meet with Champ, and we have decided to partner to do something to make it look even better. Next slide.
Thank you very much, Franz. So as I mentioned, we started with the digitization of the loading of the aircraft by having a weight and balance automated. But now we are looking at a bit further. Air cargo does not speak. It's not like a passenger that is scanning his boarding pass before entering the airplane. Usually the cargo is scanned and in the warehouse, and then the cargo is brought to the tarmac where the aircraft is located, and then it's loaded. Very, very few airplanes today are screening goods at the door of the plane. So usually what we have a lack of visibility on what happened on the tarmac. If we speak to big shippers, and especially, for example, in the pharma industry, it's very important nowadays to see how long it takes to load my cargo. Right? Sometimes it takes 45 minutes that you have to deliver the goods before the loading starts. So what we have decided to explore together with Valère is how can we make this connectivity between the aircraft and the warehouse, enabling higher visibility and also preparing the ground for IoT. I mentioned before that IoT is something we believe will contribute to increase the efficiency in our industry. It's very used at Amazon level. When you see the automated warehouse in Amazon, it's all moving with robots, communicating with instant data. In air cargo, we are still a little bit in the analog process where we are keep sending messaging thanks to people keying data on a laptop. Or using a keyboard. So with IoT, we strongly believe that by connecting not only the warehouse, but also the aircraft, we will improve this visibility. And this is what we have started to work on together with Franz and Valère. Next slide. So what are the key takeaways? Next, thank you. So co-creation is very, very important. And I think if you have looked at the Gartner presentation, which took place last week, it was interesting to see that co-creation is really what gets the world moving today. And we are very pleased to have this opportunity to co-create with Valère. But also the local value chain in Luxembourg, and thanks to Lux Innovation that made this connectivity possible. So some key takeaway. Next, please. Think global, but act local. Oops, you have been too quick. So go back a little bit. One more. Think global, but act local. In Luxembourg, we have a very, very good ecosystem for the global trade, for transportation. We have Cargolux, which was mentioned by Franz. Next slide. Thank you. So the other key takeaway, excuse me, I'm just missing one point. The other key takeaway is the digitization. The digitization is really what will make our industry move forward and accelerate, especially on the transparency side. Franz, you want to finish with the last 2 points?
Yeah, probably. As I said, I'm the sustainable guy today, but clearly, yes. I think CO2 emission has become more and more of a concern over the past decades in our world, and this is more and more requested by the customer and by everybody. So we have to go into that line, not only to look nice, but also because I think it is our common responsibility to try to improve that. I want to remind here that aviation, globally speaking, including passenger airplanes, is actually responsible for only 2 to 2.5% of the CO2 emissions in the world. That being said, we have tools, as we have seen, to keep improving that on the long term. So sustainable is one keyword here. Then, when it comes to the local value chain in Luxembourg, we do believe it's an opportunity to clearly support a more sustainable post-COVID environment. And as mentioned already by Stefan, this wouldn't have been possible in our case without the involvement of Lux Innovation, because to make it clear, we become great friends with Stefan, but only a few months ago, we didn't even know each other. So exactly. That's very cool, and that's all thanks to Lux Innovation. So thank you to all the people associated to that event, and thank you, of course, to the whole Lux Innovation team. We'll be happy to answer questions afterward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Franz. Thank you, Franz. Thank you, Stefan. So I'm back again. So let's move now to the questions to our speakers. In the meantime, do not forget to answer the poll. We have few additional questions for the participants in the poll that are very important for us. I don't think we will have time to cover all the questions now, So to the participants, you have the possibility to chat directly with the speakers after this session. So please do not hesitate to contact them directly through this platform. So we start with Piero. So Piero, there is one question, several questions, but we start with one question for you. There is a question related to recyclability of the caps with RFID. Do you have thought about solutions for recyclability of the caps? Piero, can you hear us?
Okay, now I think you can hear me, right?
Yes, we can see and hear you, yes.
Yeah, okay, so in terms of recyclability, I must say that we are quite lucky in our case. You should know that our closures are made by an aluminum shell and by a plastic liner, which is the sealing against the bottle made of glass. So these two materials are the same that are used to produce an NFC tag. In fact, an NFC tag is made by a plastic liner on which there is an aluminum antenna printed. So these two materials are the same that we use for the caps, and therefore we are not adding complication to the recycling of our caps. On top of that, they are really minor quantities in milligrams, while the cap, of course, is has weight that are in grams.
Okay, and a small question, do you have a solution to prevent the caps from being damaged? Is there a problem? Is this a problem?
Actually, a strong selling point if you compare the NFC embedded in a cap compared to a NFC behind the label, for instance. Our closures are made by quite resistant materials like plastic and aluminum, and they actually protect the NFC tag from any possible mechanical damage. And so this is a good selling point for us, because the protection of the chip is an important factor, because of course we sell millions of them and we want 100% of them to be working perfectly.
Okay, thank you, Piero. That's it for the moment. Maybe I'll get back to you later on if we still have some time, but I'm not so sure. So thank you.
Okay.
I move to Mario Treinen from B-Medical. So Mario, there is a question for you from the audience. Are you considering using IoT in your solution to allowing to provide online measurement and remotely control your medical container?
So basically we have it. I mean, I wasn't too detailed on that question. So we have an IoT solution. So we have data loggers, which are logging as well at any moment the inside temperature and the door closing. And especially using this in Amazona regions or in very remote locations, we can generate alarms. So basically, if somebody forgot to close the refrigerator door, we send out alarms to the healthcare people in remote locations to make sure that we have a control. So this is mainly done through a data logger, which is then connected to our central here, and certainly a solution we have been pioneering 3 or 4 years ago and still evolutive. So this is something which has been mainly used for the vaccine storage in remote locations, but will also be used for systems related to the COVID vaccinations. Still development in place at this stage.
Okay. And a last small question for you. So you're looking for partners, and are you ready or interested to work with early stage startups for the digitalization process you're starting?
Yes. So I had already been in contact now. So certainly, please feel free to reach out. So it's certainly something which we are at an early stage for some. Some things we have already advanced, but we have certainly some room for involving some local partners if there's a right fit. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mario.
You're welcome.
Now we move to our two last speakers. Now we start with you, Franz. So no question from the audience, but we have prepared questions for you. So Franz, you have decided to team up with a software company. What is making this initiative different from partnering with aerospace manufacturer?
Well, first of all, I think they are bringing a totally different perspective. They think out of the box. If you work with an aeronautical company, they're going to first start to think about all the limitations and all the regulation we have to comply with. When Champ is coming with their ideas, they're coming with their fresh ideas, and they are not even considering the difficulties of the certification issue sometimes, which means, on one hand, it's much, much better because that opens new perspective. That's clearly what let's say it honestly, what Tesla has been bringing to their cars. They still do cars like Toyota or Peugeot, but they bring a completely different philosophy into it. Good or bad, future will say. But what we can say is that the Airbus is a very good airplane. The 321 freighter is the best airplane in its class for freight carrying. But with Champ, we make it better. And that's only thanks to the involvement of the Champ team, the Valère team, and thanks to Grégoire Le Bigot and Arnaud Lambert in his time.
Okay, thank you for your answer, Franz. And I think we have one last question before we conclude. So to you, Stéphane, how do you see the digital evolving in the years to come?
I mean, I see it accelerating. I mean, there is digitization which is done today in an analog mode. This is what we have been doing today in the air cargo industry. But with the use of IoT device, for example, you have instant messaging, which is something completely new. And this is what we are exploring right now with Valère. And that's why it's really time now to have cargo that talks. I always like the comparison between passengers that is able to cross a border with the passport. Cargo, you have to have a lot of paperwork. Now, digitization and global trade will help to accelerate. So I see it coming very, very strong and changing completely the processes we are used to. And also the regulation, as mentioned by Franz. We are evolving in a heavy regulated industry, but it's the opportunities that digitization is bringing on the market is to help to ease the processes.
Okay. So thank you all very much for your participation. I think it was a really interesting and smart session. So thank you for your participation. I leave you now. I'd say bye-bye and see you in 2021 for our 4th edition of the Smart Manufacturing. And I let Anya conclude. Bye-bye.
Yes, thank you all for this discussion. Very interesting. And unfortunately, we need to conclude. I think we could discuss for hours. If you have further questions, you can contact the speakers through the networking section. We would like to warmly thank all the speakers of the day for their very interesting presentations and discussions. We would like to remind you that the whole session will be available on replay very soon, as, by the way, all the sessions of the Smart Manufacturing Week will be, so you can watch them again. Once more, it became very clear how important it is for companies to innovate, to adopt new technologies, to be open to work with local partners in order to face today's and tomorrow's challenges. As Luxinnovation, it is our role to support the industry on the innovation journey with our various services and help them to boost their businesses with cutting-edge solutions. So for us, it is especially rewarding to see examples of companies from different sectors that could benefit from our services, like Fit for Resilience, like bringing together potential business partners who learn from each other, etc. So we are very happy with the speakers we had today. We would be very grateful. We would be very grateful if you could complete the latest poll in the poll section on the right side of your screen, so we get to know your feedback and how we can help you and what you think about the presentations. And finally, we would also ask you not to forget to visit our service providers' virtual booths that you find in the lobby or on the left side of the screen. And also take advantage of the networking opportunities that are proposed in the virtual lobby. You will see there are lots of skills and advanced technologies available in Luxembourg, so please don't hesitate to contact service providers and partners and other peers. So that's it for today. Next meeting is tomorrow, again from 11 to 12. And we will have a webinar focusing on eco-technologies and smart cities, and I hope you will have time to join. We hope you enjoyed the session, and thank you all, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Anya. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.